Chapter 1. In my past life. To avoid being sent to the countryside, my parents arranged for me and the fake heiress to get married at the same time. The fake heiress was gentle and full of guilt towards me. She chose to marry Daniel, the good-for-nothing younger son of a textile factory director. Under the humiliation and abuse from the director's entire family, she withered day by day. She was constantly provoked without cause by Daniel's childhood sweetheart and ultimately met a tragic end, losing her unborn child and her own life. As for me, I grew up in a village, chasing chickens and teasing dogs, hot-tempered and fierce. I was married off to a righteous military officer named Simon. Simon couldn't stand how petty and sharp-tongued I was. I found him boring and rigid. We gradually grew to despise each other and eventually divorced. On the day of the divorce, I was hit by a speeding truck and died on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day we were deciding who to marry. The fake heiress and I sat in silence. After a moment, without hesitation, I snatched up the household registration book from the director's family. Mom, Dad, I want to marry Daniel, the factory director's son. Oriana, my mother said, you just got back home. You don't know what Daniel is like. The Sun family has a complicated situation. And there's a paralyzed grandmother too. If you marry into that family, you'll suffer. 15 years ago, my mother lost me when she took me out. She'd felt guilty ever since, and now that she finally had me back, she couldn't bear to see me suffer again. The fake heiress, Ruby, kept her head low, twisting her hands nervously. Her lips trembled with fear, but she still spoke up resolutely. Sister, I'll marry Daniel. You marry Simon. No one can stop me from marrying Daniel. It was love at first sight. Mom, the marriage arrangement with the Sun family was originally meant for the biological daughter of the Yi family. It should be me who goes, no matter what. I held the household book tightly, eyes full of confident anticipation. That hopeless playboy? He was the perfect match for a wild little troublemaker like me from the countryside. In the previous life, Ruby had married Daniel. Daniel looked down on her delicate, fragile ways and despised her. His mother didn't like her either and constantly made things difficult, forcing her to cook and clean for the whole family and care for the bedridden grandmother. No one in the Sun family treated Ruby kindly. Daniel even forced her to take care of his childhood sweetheart at the hospital. After working all day at home, Ruby had to face the deliberate torment of that woman at night. Exhausted and overwhelmed, she fell down the hospital stairs, 2 lives lost in one fall. As for me, I had married Simon. Simon was too upright, and his mother was a classic Southern belle, soft-spoken and delicate. To be honest, they treated me well and never lacked in providing for me materially. But we had nothing in common. He liked peace and quiet. I loved noise and fun. He and his mother spoke gently, but I had a loud voice. He thought I was too loud and dramatic, always telling me to calm down and read more. I thought he was dull. He kept repeating the same things every day. I wanted to start a small business to improve our lives, but he stopped me multiple times. One time, he almost reported me to the authorities himself. If it weren't for his mother stepping in, I'd have ended up in serious trouble. We fought constantly. In the end, we couldn't go on and agreed to divorce. After the divorce, I thought I'd finally be free to do whatever I wanted. But I got too excited, wasn't paying attention while crossing the street, and got hit by a truck, dead. Just like that. Given a second chance at life, I had no intention of ruining Simon and his gentle mother's lives again. Oriana, if you've made up your mind, go get the marriage certificate tomorrow. Chapter 2. Mother sighed twice in helplessness, exchanged a glance with father, and the two of them left together. Just like that, my marriage to Ruby was decided. Ruby clutched my hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. Sister, the Sun family is a den of wolves. You shouldn't have. Not necessarily. I tightened my grip on her hand. I could see the guilt she felt toward me from the look on her face when she mentioned Daniel. I was sure she had been reborn too. I'm not someone who takes losses lying down. You'll see the Sun family get what's coming. Ruby froze. Sister, why you came back too? I nodded. She threw her arms around me and burst into loud sobs. After crying it all out, she told me in detail everything she had endured in the Sun household. The next day, Daniel and Simon arrived early at our home. Ruby and I were both dressed in new clothes. walking toward the men who would become our husbands. After getting our marriage certificates, I returned with Daniel to his home. I casually reached back and locked the courtyard gate. The moment we stepped in, I saw my brand new mother-in-law, Amalia, seated stiffly in a chair. She raised a brow, speaking with impatience. "You're just getting back now?" Daniel walked in and tossed the marriage certificate at her. "Mom, we had to wait in line. You brought home this muddy-footed bumpkin?" Amalia shot to her feet and stormed up to me. "A low-born peasant like you dares step onto Sun family land? Kneel!" She raised her hand to jab at my forehead. In the past life, Ruby had faced the same scene when she entered this house. Amalia had said, "You filthy imposter rat. You dare walk into the Sun family?" Ruby had burst into tears. Amalia took the opportunity to kick her to the ground. From that moment on, Ruby never managed to rise again in that household. This time, I watched the finger coming toward me, calmly raised my hand, and crack, snapped it clean. "Ah! You wretched little bitch. How dare you!" Amalia's scream pierced the ceiling, drawing the neighbors to gather outside and watch the commotion. Daniel and Amalia hadn't expected me to strike. They froze for a moment, and then both lunged at me. "You damn slut. How dare you hit my mom?" Daniel shouted, throwing a punch. "You little whore. I'll kill you," Amalia screeched, grabbing the broom nearby and swinging it at me. I caught Daniel's arm, crack crack, and both his arms dropped uselessly at his sides. Daniel let out a miserable cry. The broom in Amalia's hand? I snatched it away before she could even react. You, how dare you? You," I smiled. "Mother-in-law, pleasure to meet you. Do you like this welcome gift?" Amalia opened her mouth to curse, but I brought the broom down hard on her thigh. She cried out in pain and fell back onto the floor. "Can we have a quiet conversation now?" I asked. Eyes narrowed as I looked at the two of them. Amalia and Daniel were both shuddering in pain, but instinctively fell silent. After all, at that moment, I looked like a devil straight from hell. They couldn't beat me. What else could they do but yield? What do you want?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. "First of all," I said calmly, "our marriage didn't just save me from going to the countryside, it saved you too. That's the entire point of this arrangement, so don't go acting like you did me some big favor in front of my sister. Got it?" Chapter 3. Daniel trembled. "Why, you're married to me now. So you're part of the Sun family. You should be a good wife. We need to live peacefully together." "You mean I should suffer while your family gets to live in peace?" I raised an eyebrow. Daniel's lips quivered. "I've got 100 ways to deal with you people. Let me give you a little preview." I stepped in front of him, grabbed his arms and, with 2 swift motions, popped them back into their sockets. Then I shoved the broom into his hands and stood up straight. From my pocket, I pulled out the makeup I had prepared earlier and quickly dabbed a few spots on my face. My previously fair face turned bruised and blotchy in seconds. I added a touch of fake blood to the corner of my mouth. Daniel was stunned. Amalia, too, stood frozen. What are you doing?" Amalia asked, her voice trembling. I smiled brightly at them. "Aren't you two the best at twisting the truth? Time for you to experience how it feels." With one hand on each of them, I dragged Daniel and Amalia to the door and shoved them outside. Before they could regain their footing, I dashed ahead of them, swung the courtyard gate open, and burst into tears. "Stop hitting me! Please stop! I know I was wrong," I sobbed loudly. "Mother-in-law, I just got married into the family. I didn't know I had to kneel at the gate. I was only a little late. And you had Daniel beat me. Woo-woo, Daniel. I get it now. I know marrying you is a blessing I earned in a past life. You're the son of a factory director and I'm just a lowly country girl. I married up. And I swear I'll serve you well from now on. Father-in-law is our household's god. I remember everything mother-in-law told me." I cried and shouted at the top of my lungs. The neighbors who had gathered outside to watch the scene all froze. An eerie silence fell at the gate. This was 1970. Kneeling at the gate, blessing from a past life, household god. Those phrases strung together painted a horrifying picture. Amalia screamed and rushed forward, trying to cover my mouth. I collapsed to the ground, trembling. "Shut up! Shut your mouth! What nonsense are you spewing?" Her voice was urgent and her face twisted with fury, just the kind of face that screamed abuser. Some neighbors finally couldn't take it anymore and stepped forward to intervene. Amalia, calm down. She's a new daughter-in-law. Even if you want to set some rules, there's a process. Yeah. What kind of things are you saying? This is going to ruin Director Sun's reputation. I think we need to report this to the Women's Federation. Somebody go call the neighborhood committee. No, it wasn't me. She's the one who hit us. She dislocated both my son's arms. Amalia shouted, furious. She couldn't believe they were the ones being painted as the villains. Everyone turned to look at Daniel, who was still holding the broom. His brain whirred into overdrive. Then, he knelt in front of me with a thud. Wife, I'm sorry. I was wrong. This will never happen again. I swear. Let's go home. Don't make a scene in front of the neighbors. Daniel may have been a playboy, but he wasn't stupid. And he didn't care about saving face. As long as he could get what he wanted, he'd bow to anyone. Our eyes met. I grabbed his arm. Really? Daniel's body tensed. Yes. Really. I'll listen to everything you say from now on. I'm sorry about today. We've made a scene. Oriana. Let's go home. I gave him a soft, delicate smile. You'll really listen to me? Yes. Daniel gritted his teeth. Then let's go home. I stood up with his arm as support, from an angle no one else could see. I flashed him a dazzling smile. For some reason, his knees nearly gave out under him. Chapter 4. Daniel helped me into the house while Amalia stomped her feet in frustration. I think Daniel's quite a good one. One neighbor murmured. He talks so politely to his wife. Yeah, it's really his mom causing all the trouble. I used to think the Sun family was decent folk. Who'd have guessed the factory director's wife would turn out to be such a vicious old hag? Maybe Director Sun acts all nice at work but shows his real face at home. Hey, don't say things like that out loud. If word spreads, Director Sun could be in serious trouble. If the authorities really came to investigate, it'd be the new daughter-in-law they ask. Exactly. If she insists that the talk about gods and past life blessings came from the Sun family. At that moment, Amalia finally cooled down. She'd been the director's wife for years, arrogant and domineering. Yes, but not stupid. Everyone, please don't jump to conclusions, she said, adjusting her tone. It was just a little disagreement between me and my daughter-in-law. She must have picked up some nonsense somewhere and got confused just now. We never said those things. Amalia was fuming inside, but she had no choice but to lower her stance and explain. If this blew up any further, it could really affect her husband. We've all been neighbors for years. You know what kind of people we are. The girl's still young. She said something wrong. I apologize on her behalf. Please, let's not spread rumors. Her words were a mix of softness and veiled threats. She even scanned the crowd one by one, making it clear she'd remember who said what. It was the 1970s. People were radical, sure, but they also knew the Sun family had powerful backing. Not someone they could afford to cross. With some nervous laughter and vague nods, the neighbors dispersed. Only then did Amalia shut the gate and return to the house. But the moment she stepped in, she almost fainted from rage. I was sitting in her chair, where she had been before, and Daniel was standing beside me, massaging my shoulders. You, Amalia's fat shook with rage. Mom, I said calmly. Daniel and I just got married. Shouldn't you go get some meat? You don't expect a new daughter-in-law's first meal to be all vegetables, right? Daniel chimed in quickly. Yeah, Mom. I'll go with you. You queue up at the co-op. I'll head to the meat factory. Fine. Amalia ground her teeth, but agreed. Where's your room? I turned to Daniel. East side. I'll take you. Okay. Daniel led me to his room. There weren't even any festive red wedding symbols hung up. The room was filthy, no space to walk. Socks and dirty clothes tossed everywhere. I glanced up at him. I'll clean it, Daniel said immediately. Mom, I called out. Daniel's cleaning the room. The co-op and meat factory, you'll have to go by yourself. Arms crossed. My voice was light as air, but my words were heavy with dominance. Amalia was livid but dared not speak. She grabbed the money and ration coupons and stormed off to buy meat. Under my gaze, Daniel started gathering up his socks and dirty laundry. Daniel, it's okay if your mom didn't teach you. I'll teach you. Just follow what I say. Daniel, I don't want to. But I'm too scared not to. Outer clothes go in one basin, underwear in another, socks in their own. That's so much work, Daniel muttered under his breath. I grabbed the broom. Daniel's whole body twitched, and suddenly, his hands were moving very efficiently. The next hour was a whirlwind, sweeping, wiping the table, organizing the wardrobe, getting rid of trash, scrubbing the floor, changing the sheets and covers. Daniel did everything beautifully. If he didn't do it right, I popped his arm out and shoved it back in, then he did do it right. By the time Amalia came home, carrying 2 jeans of pork belly, Daniel was sitting in the courtyard doing laundry. Seeing her son so well behaved, Amalia was so moved, she almost cried. Chapter 5. I'll cook, I said as I stepped forward and took the meat from Amalia's hands. She froze. You'll cook? Then, like a light bulb going off in her head, she remembered, Director Oscar's son, her husband, was coming home for lunch today. She must have assumed I was trying to impress him out of fear. Within moments, Amalia was back to feeling smug again. I ignored her and turned to Daniel. If it's not washed properly, you know what happens. Daniel's eyes reddened. Got it. I headed straight to the kitchen. Amalia's cooking was bland and stingy. Despite being the factory director's wife, someone with access to food others couldn't get, she kept her miserly habits. But me? I wasn't going to shortchange myself. An hour later, lunch was on the table. Glistening braised pork belly, crispy stir-fried greens with pork cracklings, chilled cucumber salad, a big bowl of egg drop soup with whole chunks of egg visible, and a steaming pot of white rice. Amalia's eyelid twitched with pain. Daniel swallowed hard. He was starving. Doing chores really wore him out. And damn, his wife could cook. Thankfully, that was when Oscar's son arrived home. Amalia, something smells especially good today, Oscar said with a smile as he stepped inside. He glanced at his wife and son, both sitting at the table with defeated expressions. Then looked at me. Oriana made lunch today, didn't she? Yes, Dad, I replied sweetly, looking like the perfect daughter-in-law. Amalia jumped to her feet, and tears began streaming down her cheeks. Oscar, you have no idea. This little tramp has turned our home upside down since the moment she arrived. She hid us, made Daniel do housework, those clothes and bedsheets outside. Daniel washed them. Oscar's expression darkened. Amalia, watch your mouth. Amalia flinched. Dad, I said calmly. There were some misunderstandings earlier. Let's eat first. Braised pork doesn't taste good cold. After lunch, I'll explain everything to you privately. My voice was steady and polite. Oscar nodded. Amalia stared in disbelief. Just a few words, and Oscar was already siding with me? Daniel's eyes lit up at the mention of food, those clear, dopey eyes practically sparkled. I scooped a bowl of rice for him. He received it with reverence. Thank you, wife. Oscar glanced at me again. He knew exactly what kind of fool his son was. For Daniel to act so obedient, he must be terrified. Oscar was curious, just how had I managed to tame his brat? After lunch, Daniel volunteered to clear the table and even wash the dishes. In the end, Amalia couldn't stand it anymore and took over dishwashing herself. I followed Oscar into his study, in front of someone smart and powerful. I didn't bother beating around the bush. I laid out everything that had happened that morning, clearly and honestly. Oscar nodded in satisfaction. Oriana, you're a clever one. From now on, this family's discipline will rest on you. Whatever you do, I'll support it. See? I knew Oscar's son wasn't an idiot. He wouldn't have become factory director otherwise. He knew exactly what kind of mess his wife and son were. Having someone who could keep them in check, that was a blessing. In my previous life, he occasionally spoke up for Ruby too, but he was always too busy, often working late or traveling. He didn't have the time or energy to intervene. Dad, besides Mom and Daniel, may I handle the rest of the family however I see fit? You may. If you ever need my help, just say the word. Thank you, Dad. Chapter 6. After leaving the study, Oscar's son headed straight back to work. I returned to my room for a nap. Daniel followed me in. What should I do now? He asked. That book on your desk, read it. I'll quiz you when I wake up. What? Daniel's face froze in disbelief. He honestly hadn't expected to be quizzed on a book instead of, well, Newlywed activities. Huh? I looked up. Expression sharp. I am reading now. Daniel immediately grabbed the book like a soldier receiving orders. Outside the door, Amalia was eavesdropping, hearing how I ordered Daniel around. Her whole body trembled with rage. No, there's no way she'd let a mud-legged peasant girl run their household. She needed reinforcements, people who would put that girl in her place. She refused to believe that just one village girl could stir up a storm under her roof. Amalia glanced cautiously into the room, confirming I wasn't watching. She quietly slipped out of the courtyard. I slept soundly for an hour, stretching comfortably. I sat up, only to see Daniel asleep at the desk, his head resting on the open book. My eyes narrowed slightly. Daniel might still be salvageable. If he remained obedient, we could make this marriage work. But if he dared to continue playing the family's lackey, well, a quiet little accident could always be arranged. Bang! Our door suddenly flew open with a kick. Daniel jumped up in shock and crashed straight to the floor. Who the hell just kicked my door? A middle-aged woman at the entrance paused for a second, caught off guard. Daniel, Auntie didn't mean to scare you, she said sweetly, but that little slut has brought chaos to our house since she arrived. Your aunties, uncles, and I are all here to stand up for you. That woman, Diana, was Oscar's son's younger sister, and Amalia's strongest enforcer. In the previous life, she'd been one of Ruby's worst tormentors. She constantly dragged Ruby to her place to do chores, and when Ruby was taking care of the paralyzed elder, Diana nitpicked and bullied her nonstop. I stood up. Daniel got off the floor too, glancing nervously at the crowd of relatives outside, then back at me, clearly torn. He didn't know whose side to take. I strode over to the doorway. In the next moment, under Daniel's stunned gaze, I raised my hand and landed 2 clean slaps across Diana's face. Those were for Ruby. Then 2 more. Those were for me, for daring to kick open my door. That was a death wish. Diana froze, completely dumbfounded. You dare hit me? Didn't I already? You little tramp. I'll fight you to the death. Diana shrieked and lunged. I kicked her straight in the stomach, sending her flying 2 meters out of the room. I turned and looked at Daniel. Daniel, pick your side. You only get 1 moment of hesitation. Maybe it was the fury in my eyes. Maybe it was the pain memory of his dislocated arms. Whatever it was, Daniel trembled and dropped to his knees with a thud. Wife, I'm with you. I'll listen to everything you say. I nodded, satisfied. Smart boy. Daniel kept trembling. I walked calmly out of the room. Outside, a dozen relatives were already in a frenzy. Their shouting curses layering over each other. Seeing Diana kicked out and Daniel kneeling, their fury hit its peak. My eyes narrowed. I strolled over to the big water vat in the courtyard, grabbed the full tank with one hand, lifted it up, and hurled it right at the center of the stunned crowd, aiming straight for Amalia, who was too shocked to move. Aha! Chapter 7. The water vat stopped less than 10 centimeters from Amalia's head. The sheer pressure made Amalia wet her pants on the spot. She peed herself. The gaggle of aunts and distant relatives had long since backed far away. The more timid ones had even closed their eyes in fear. I curled my lips into a smile and casually flipped my wrist. The vat landed steadily back in place with a loud clang. So, any other relative want to teach me a lesson? I've got time now. My gaze swept slowly across the crowd, finally landing on Diana. Her legs gave out and she collapsed to the ground. We're just here to visit. Niece-in-law, you're the new bride. And we're elders. Oh, so the Sun family custom is to visit the new daughter-in-law empty-handed? No gifts for first meetings? Yes, yes, yes. Diana scrambled to dig through her pockets. She found 50 cents, money she'd originally planned to use to buy some meat. Her heart ached as she handed it over. Damn that sister-in-law of hers, bringing home such a fierce daughter-in-law, clearly tired of living. I took Diana's 50 cents, then looked to the others. They all got the message fast and immediately dug into their own pockets, each handing over what they had. Well, now that you've seen me, and given your welcome gifts, would you like to stay for dinner? I asked. No, we were just leaving, they stammered, helping one another up and fleeing the Sun household at record speed. Only Amalia remained, her pants still soaked in the courtyard. What's wrong, mother-in-law? All your relatives are so generous and understanding. Are you the only one who didn't bring a gift? I looked down at her, then wrinkled my nose and stepped back in disgust. I do. It's in the box at the head of my bed. I'll go get it. No need. I'll get it myself. I strode into her room. By the time Amalia came crawling after me in a panic, I had already broken the lock on the box by her bed. Smoothly, I popped the lid and took out all the money and ration tickets inside. A quick glance, at least 1,000 yuan. In 1970, 1,000 yuan had enormous purchasing power. Mother-in-law, you really are the most generous of them all. Pocketing the loot, I walked out of the room. Now go clean yourself up. You're not that old. Stop peeing yourself. I'm not your nurse. I marched back to my room. After a while, I finally heard Amalia's muffled sobs from the other room. Daniel was standing quietly in the corner, like a schoolboy being punished. See? There's no such thing as an unruly husband or a meddling mother-in-law. There's only fists that aren't hard enough, and slaps that don't land loud enough. That night, I cooked again. Daniel helped out, washing and cutting the vegetables. Amalia peeked into the kitchen and saw her son being spun around like a top under my orders. Her face was full of grievance, but she didn't dare say a word. If you're up, stop standing there like a statue. Doesn't the yard need sweeping? I said coolly. I'll sweep now. Amalia had been planning to sneak out and tell the neighbors about her aggressive daughter-in-law, but she didn't even make it to the gate before being put to work. Her heart was bitter, but she didn't dare rebel. Just wait until my husband comes home. She would definitely report everything to him. When Oscar's son returned from work, the first thing he saw was his usually arrogant wife, sweeping the courtyard. And his son, the one who wouldn't lift a finger even if a bottle of oil fell over, was doing the dishes. Oscar looked at me, his daughter-in-law, and his gaze grew even softer. Chapter 8. Just as the food was placed on the table, a pair of fraternal twins ran in through the door. Aunt, Uncle, we're back. I glanced at them and searched my memory. Yep, these two little punks, Joel and Jessica, were a real headache in the past life. They were Amalia's younger brother's children. Amalia, being a textbook brother simp, had dragged them over under the excuse of giving them a better education. Since her husband was the factory director and her in-laws had money, this gave her high status in her maiden family. In reality, all the work, tutoring, laundry, tidying their room, and taking care of the two bratty Joel and Jessica fell on Ruby. Amalia had the nerve to call it, helping her adjust to raising children early. Yeah, right. These two kids saw that no one cared for Ruby, so they quickly flipped their attitude. At first, they acted bossy only when no one was watching. Later, when no one stopped them, they didn't even bother pretending in front of others. I smirked. Disciplining brats? Oh, I love that job. Joel, Jessica, this is your sister-in-law. Say hello. Oscar's son introduced us. Amalia's eyes widened. What was going on? Why did it seem like her husband was pleased with this daughter-in-law? Hello, sister-in-law. The twins chirped sweetly at me. They knew they were outsiders, and they feared Oscar's son. They didn't dare mess with Daniel, so they clung to Amalia and kept a probing eye on the daughter-in-law who arrived after them. I gave them a gentle smile. Hello. Go wash your hands. Time to eat. Yes. Sister-in-law. Joel and Jessica obediently washed up and sat neatly at the table. Just after eating, Oscar was called away by factory staff for an emergency, so he greeted us briefly and left. The moment he walked out, Joel and Jessica both sighed in relief. They turned toward Amalia, just in time to catch her shooting me a vicious glare. Mother-in-law, having trouble with your eyes? I can help you fix them, I said as I set down my chopsticks. Amalia jolted. And no, it's fine. Daniel had finished eating too, but since I hadn't moved, he didn't dare move either. Amalia glanced at me, then at the twins. Oriana, as their sister-in-law, it's your duty to take care of your younger siblings-in-law. You should. Got it. They're under my care now. I cut her off smoothly. Joel, Jessica, clean up the table. You'll take turns doing the dishes with Daniel and mother-in-law, 1 week each. I instructed without missing a beat. Us do the dishes? Why don't you do it? Amalia snapped. She was the mother-in-law. Since when did she have to follow orders and do dishes? If word got out, she'd lose face entirely. I cooked. I replied calmly. Amalia's mouth twitched. She wanted to say she could cook, but after eating 2 meals I made, she had no desire to go back to her own flavorless disasters. This week is Daniel's turn. Next week Joel's. Then Jessica's mother-in-law. I've scheduled you for last, I said, rising from my seat. I also saw your dirty laundry by the door. You too, Joel. Jessica, you're not little kids anymore. Finish your homework within 1 hour. Then go do your laundry. With everything arranged, I turned and walked back to my room, leaving behind a group of people staring at one another in stunned silence. Daniel cleared his throat, just as Joel and Jessica thought he was about to yell at his wife. He said, I'll give you one piece of advice: do whatever my wife says, or deal with the consequences yourselves. And with that, he proudly marched off to wash dishes and tidy the kitchen. Chapter 9. I had just returned to my room when I heard a loud splashing sound from the courtyard. Laughter echoed, 2 kids giggling and playing. Daniel glanced out from the kitchen. He had just heard his mom whispering to those 2 little troublemakers, encouraging them to stir things up. Sigh. Why do they never learn from their beatings? His wife wasn't someone you could mess with and come out unscathed. Bang! I kicked open the door and strode into the courtyard. Joel and Jessica were standing there, splashing each other with water using basins. When they saw me, their movements froze for a moment. But when I didn't immediately say anything, and even seemed to be smiling, they grew cocky again. Their actions became even bolder, sending water flying everywhere. The courtyard was soaked, and even the clean sheets, quilt covers, and clothes Daniel had just washed were splattered with muddy spots. Is water fun? I asked. Yeah, super fun. Sister-in-law, wanna join us? Joel asked with a sly grin. Amalia was peeking from behind the door, eyes glued to the scene. She just knew it. You couldn't lay a finger on misbehaving kids, especially when they weren't even yours. She thought she had me cornered. Sure, I'll play with you, I said sweetly. Joel and Jessica froze. They clearly hadn't figured out what I was planning. Without warning, I grabbed a basin, yanked water from the vat, and splash, drenched them both. Before they could even react, splash, 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 4 or 5 more basins followed, drenching them from head to toe. In our past life, this was exactly what they loved doing. Every time Ruby did the laundry, they accidentally splashed water everywhere, ruining the clean clothes. At first they pretended to apologize. Later, they just straight up laughed and said, we did it on purpose. Some kids are just born rotten. I had no intention of rehabilitating someone else's little brats. They could stay in this house as long as they obeyed me and didn't cause trouble. Otherwise, heh, ah, wah. The 2 kids screamed in turns. Amalia rushed out, trembling all over, and tried to scoop them into her arms. Joel, my precious babies, how could she do this to you? Splash! Splash! Ah! Another scream, this time from Amalia herself. Mom, if you want to bathe, the bathroom is over there, I said lightly, washing up in the courtyard in front of all the neighbors. Not very classy. You're the factory director's wife, right? Don't embarrass Dad. Amalia was shivering, her face pale with fury and cold. She scrambled to drag Joel and Jessica toward the washroom to clean up and change clothes. It was summer, sure, but cold water baths still made people sick. Daniel had already finished tidying up the kitchen and now stood obediently beside me. Wife, I finished all the chores, he said. Bring me the lounge chair. Okay. Wifey. Daniel huffed and puffed as he carried the rocking chair over. It was only a few steps, but he looked like he was about to collapse. I shot him a look of utter disdain. He straightened up instantly, trying to control his breathing. Tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. I'm taking you to train. Dad asked you to take the factory's hiring exam, and even with the lowest standards, you couldn't pass. Daniel lowered his head. Even his high school diploma had been gifted, thanks to his dad pulling strings. But when it came time for the factory exam, his dad personally proctored the test. Not a single shortcut allowed. And he still failed even the security department entrance exam. Sigh. Chapter 10. Half an hour later, Amalia came out with the 2 kids. The moment she stepped into the courtyard and saw me reclining comfortably while Daniel stood by, serving tea and water, her chest felt like it had been stomped on, again and again. It hurt, but there was nothing she could do. Joel and Jessica looked at me with unmistakable fear in their eyes. Just as the three of them were about to retreat to their rooms. Stop. My cold voice rang out. All three of them jolted in unison. What now? You already hit them, Amalia stammered. Mother-in-law. When did I hit anyone? I was just playing with the kids. They invited me. Didn't you, Jessica? I fixed my gaze on her. Jessica always looked weak and harmless. But in truth, every bad idea came from her. Joel was just the knife she wielded, a reckless tiger under her command. Why yes, sister-in-law, Jessica replied, for the first time truly afraid of someone. Well then, playtime's over. Time for homework, Amalia said quickly, terrified I'd do something else to the kids. They dirted Daniel's hard work. They muddied the entire courtyard. Who's supposed to clean all that? I asked. You're their sister-in-law. Kids don't know better. You should just. It's fine if they don't know better. I'll teach them, I said with a smile. Mother-in-law, do you want to go to bed now? Amalia suddenly remembered that water vat that had almost flattened her face. I'll go sleep now. She turned around and ran. Joel and Jessica stood across from me, swallowing nervously. This sister-in-law was terrifying. All right, enough staring. You've got a long night ahead. First, scrub the entire courtyard clean. Every patch of mud, every brick, spotless. Second, rewash everything Daniel had just finished. You'll get to rest after you're done. Joel and Jessica stood frozen, dumbfounded. Why should we? Crack! I smashed the wash basin at my feet with one kick. Metal, crushed into pieces. Sharp fragments scattered right by their feet. You were saying? I looked at Joel. Jessica yanked Joel's arm. Sister-in-law, we'll start now. I smiled. Smart girl. Jessica might be sly, but at least she knew when to fold. Daniel stood beside me, fanning me gently, obedient like a big loyal dog. Joel and Jessica got to work fast. They'd grown up in the countryside, farm work didn't scare them. How hard could chores be? They swept up the standing water, mopped the entire yard till it sparkled, rewashed every piece of clothing and linen. 2 hours later, they finally finished. I napped in the rocking chair while they worked. Sister-in-law, we're done. Can we go to bed now? Jessica asked timidly. Yes, but finish your homework first. Yes, sister-in-law. The twins slinked back to their room. I went to shower. When I came back, Daniel was standing by the bed, eyes lingering a little too long on the freshly changed sheets. When he saw me enter, he looked flustered. Wife, tonight is our wedding night. I was thinking. He slowly stepped closer, eyes hot, breath even hotter. I want to be with you. Chapter 11. Smack! I slapped Daniel across the face. Stop dreaming. I'm not willing. But wife, we're already married, Daniel said pitifully, looking like the aggrieved one in a drama. Marriage doesn't mean we have to sleep together. If you want to get in bed with me, you'll have to earn it. I've been obedient enough, haven't I? He mumbled. One day isn't nearly enough. You can only touch me when I say so. Daniel, this kind of thing? Only I get to bring it up, you don't. Why? You tell me. Daniel, because you're stronger. Because your punches hurt. Me, good. You know your place. That night, Daniel slept on the floor. I knew it wasn't a long-term solution. It was summer now, so the floor was still warm. But when autumn and winter came, it wouldn't be fit for a person to sleep on. I didn't care much for Daniel, but I wasn't cruel enough to let him develop health problems. So, this room needed some remodeling. With that thought in mind, I drifted off to sleep. Meanwhile, Daniel twisted and turned on the hard floor. Damn, it's really hard. I'm her husband and I don't even get a bed? And my wife is so fierce. But she's also really pretty. Daniel sighed softly, wondering when he'd finally be allowed to hold his wife and sleep beside her. Sigh. The next morning at 5 a.m., I got up. Daniel was still snoring away, so I grabbed him by the collar and hauled him up. He blinked at me, completely dazed. Wife, wash your face and brush your teeth. I'm taking you for a run. Run? Running? Daniel snapped awake. He didn't want to, but he didn't dare say no. So, dragging his feet. He went to wash up. Amalia hadn't slept well all night, hearing noise outside. She got up too. She stared, stunned, as her son, the one who never got out of bed before noon, was actually up, brushing his teeth. In the past, she had to chase him around the house yelling just to get him to wash his face. "Good morning, mother-in-law. Watch the fire for me, will you? There's porridge in the clay pot, steamed buns in the big pot, and the vegetables in the basin. Please wash those." I laid out the instructions clearly. After yesterday, Amalia finally understood the power gap between us. She didn't dare pull any tricks this time and simply nodded. "Daniel, let's go." "Coming," Daniel answered and quickly followed me outside. "Daniel, where are you going so early?" Amalia asked, grabbing her son with concern. "I'm going running, Mom," Daniel said and rushed to catch up to me, afraid of falling behind and getting punished. Not far from the Sun home was a small river with clean, flowing water. Kids often played and caught fish there. The early morning breeze was cool and refreshing, and the ripples on the river made the whole world feel calm. "Warm up your joints first. Then, 50 laps. Daniel's eyes went wide. He was certain his wife was going to run him to death. 1 hour later, we returned home. Daniel's legs were so weak he could barely stand. So tired. Right then, we bumped into Oscar's son at the gate. "Oriana, where have you two been?" "Dad, I took Daniel out for a run. There's a recruitment at the factory next month. Daniel and I both want to apply," I said with a smile. "Oriana, you're a high school graduate, right?" "Yes, Dad." "All right then, you both meet the application requirements. If you pass the exam, the textile factory welcomes you." "Thank you, Dad." The three of us walked inside together. Oscar didn't even spare a glance for his son, who looked half dead from exhaustion. "Daniel, why do I feel like I'm the one who married into her family?" Chapter 12. After breakfast, Joel and Jessica dragged their feet on their way to school. Oscar's son changed clothes and left for work again, and at home remained the housewife Amalia, the unemployed Daniel, and me, mother-in-law. "Go clean your own room. Daniel and I will handle the main hall and the courtyard," I said, turning to head back to my room with Daniel. Bang! The front gate was shoved open with a loud crash. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, after yesterday's fiasco, there were still relatives from the Sun or by families bold enough to show their faces? Diana entered, flanked by her 2 sons, carrying an old woman into the house. My eyes narrowed slightly. That old woman was Daniel's grandmother. She had been living with Diana for years. Of course, that care wasn't free. Oscar's son gave Diana 5 yuan a month for her, with extra money for medicine and checkups. Back then, the old lady could still walk and move around. She'd help Diana babysit and do chores. But last month, she fell and hurt herself. After that, she couldn't move. She needed someone to clean up after her, literally. Diana, being lazy and greedy, wasn't about to spend her days wiping poop. She was planning to ask her big brother for more money. If the price was right, maybe she'd hold on. But after getting humiliated at my hands yesterday, she couldn't stand it. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. So she told her mother everything. The old woman immediately demanded to move in. A new daughter-in-law? The pressure of filial piety alone should crush her. Surely, no one would dare lay a hand on a paralyzed grandmother. If I so much as raised my voice, the neighbor's spit would drown me, and even Oscar's son would have to kick me out. Diana was certain, once her brother stepped in, I'd be divorced on the spot. So she showed up early this morning, fully prepared. Sister-in-law, Mom's been living with me for years, but when she heard Daniel got married, she insisted on coming here to enjoy her granddaughter-in-law's care. Diana shouted at the top of her lungs, making sure the whole neighborhood heard. I just smiled. That old witch was rotten to the core. In my past life, the moment she met Ruby, she forced her to kneel and wait on her hand and foot. When Ruby refused, she cried and accused her of abuse. She deliberately wet herself just so Ruby would have to clean it up. If the food was cold, she screamed it would freeze her to death. If hot, it was to burn her alive. Too big a spoonful? She'd choke. Too small? She'd starve. Everything meant death. Yet somehow, she just kept living. Amalia and Diana exchanged glances. They immediately understood each other's intent and walked over cheerfully. Yes. Mom, you should stay here now. DeLong. Who, bring your grandma to her room. Oriana, your grandmother-in-law is back. You should. Amalia looked at me expectantly. I raised an eyebrow. Of course she should be cared for. Amalia immediately felt triumphant. She shot Diana a proud smile. Oh, my quilt hasn't been aired out. No one bothered. You, granddaughter-in-law, just married in and already. Before she could start yelling, I'd already opened every door and window and raised my voice deliberately. Mother, I'm new to the family. I didn't even know Grandma was alive. You knew, didn't you? Why didn't you air out her bedding? Don't tell me you didn't want to take care of Grandma? Amalia, wait. What? How did it become my job all of a sudden? Diana jumped in. Oriana, you're her granddaughter-in-law. What's wrong with you taking care of her? Are you saying you refuse? I never said that, but my mother-in-law here is her daughter-in-law, and she ranks ahead of me. I can't take her place in fulfilling her filial duties. Can I? Then I turned to Diana with a sincere smile. Auntie, I know caring for Grandma has been hard. My mother-in-law hasn't done enough all these years. I stand with you this time. Chapter 13. You're talking nonsense. Diana panicked. She might be brash, but she didn't dare offend her sister-in-law. Her brother's money? It all went to his wife. Auntie, I said, smiling. My mother-in-law is a very filial person. She hasn't had a chance to personally serve her own mother-in-law in years. Now that the opportunity's here, she couldn't be happier. Thank you for all your hard work. I stretched out my hand. As for this month's caregiving payment, I believe my mother-in-law gave it to you, right? Today is only the first day. Kindly return it to us. Diana, what are you saying? Auntie, I interrupted coldly. You took money to care for Grandma, but now that you're dumping her here, you can't keep taking the payment. Greed will swallow you whole. Diana's two sons had already backed all the way to the door. They'd come yesterday too, and had witnessed my power. They had actually opposed Diana coming again, but when she threw a tantrum, they had no choice but to carry the old lady over. And now? Not only had they lost their dignity, they'd also lost their regular flow of goodies. The 5 yuan a month? Gone. The meat, eggs, and milk that used to end up on their table, judging by their new sister-in-law, also gone. The more they thought about it, the more they realized Mom is a damn idiot. Diana, under intense pressure, finally muttered, who would carry 5 yuan on them? Daniel, walk your aunt and cousins home. While you're at it, bring the money back, I ordered. Yes, wife. Daniel perked up. Finally, a chance to leave the house. 1 hour, that's all you get. Daniel, my soul weeps. Got it, wife, aunt, big cousin, second cousin, let's go. And with that, Daniel herded them out the door. Now, only the old lady, Amalia, and I were left in the room. You little homewrecker, the old lady snapped. You just married in and already disrespect your elders and husband? You trying to go to heaven? Neil, bring me the spittoon. I let out a light chuckle. Amalia flinched instinctively. Wham! I kicked Amalia in the leg, and she dropped to her knees with a thud. Grandma, your actual daughter-in-law is right here. Ow, 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 Amalia whimpered in pain. I kicked the spittoon toward the old woman. She caught it on reflex. Grandma, look, your hands work just fine. Since you can hold things, don't torment your daughter-in-law. If word gets out, people will say you're a tyrant who bullies the younger generation. You bullies like you don't live long. With that, I turned and walked out. Let them stew in there. I didn't care. The old crone fumed. Not only did I refuse to wait on her, I just walked off. Her teeth itched with rage. That little B***tch. Mom, please, shut up already. Amalia muttered. That daughter-in-law? We can't afford to mess with her. If you really want to live longer, go back to Aunt Diana's place. After multiple failed tests, Amalia had finally learned her lesson. I was someone none of them could handle. First, my fists beat everyone in the family. Second, Oscar's son backed me all the way. In the son and by families, Those 2 points were absolute trump cards. Humph. I still don't believe it. Let's see how long she can ignore me. Go buy groceries. The old lady growled. Amalia sighed deeply. Fine. If her mother-in-law insisted on walking straight into a brick wall, then as a daughter-in-law, she wouldn't stop her. Chapter 14. Amalia left to buy groceries. In the courtyard, it was just me and the old hag. I knew she was up to something. Oriana, come quickly. I need to use the toilet. Hurry. I walked in briskly. The moment she saw me, she smiled sweetly, then forced herself to poop in her pants. Ugh, absolutely disgusting. Oriana, look how late you came. Grandma couldn't hold it. Come clean me up. Will you? She said. Still smiling, I smiled right back, held my breath, closed all the windows I'd just opened, and shut the door too, nice and tight. Grandma, I'm just a weak little daughter-in-law. I can't lift you. But don't worry, Daniel will be back soon. And if not, my mother-in-law will be home shortly. Your very own daughter-in-law and grandson surely won't mind cleaning up after you. You dare? Oriana, I'm your grandma. Oh, Grandma, what are you saying? I do care, but I really can't lift you. Still, you're right, it's not good to leave you sitting in filth. I'll go find someone to help. Old Lady Ma from next door is known for her helpfulness. I'm sure she'll be delighted to assist with a poop and pee stuck elderly lady. I turned to leave. That old woman and Ma Granny had hated each other their whole lives, always bickering. Stop right there, she screeched. If that woman found out about this, she'd never live it down. She groaned and got out of bed herself. Oh my, what a medical miracle. Just one poop and you're cured of paralysis. I beamed at her. The old crone huffed off to the washroom, muttering as she went to clean herself up. Naturally, I stayed far, far away. She cursed the whole way through, washed up, changed clothes, and then came marching back over with a basin full of her soiled laundry. Oriana, wash these clothes for me. Oh, I can't. Absolutely not. I still need to bring Ma Granny over to witness this miracle. Maybe even call Diana and the others to tell them. Aya! Oriana, shut up. In the end, she had to wash her clothes herself. As it should be. You make your mess. You deal with it. When Amalia got home, the first thing she saw was Grandma's clothes hanging on the line. Her eyes lit up. Ah, the old fox got the upper hand. Just as she was celebrating this tiny victory, she spotted the old hag squatting on the ground, scrubbing poop stains. Amalia blinked, stunned. Mom, a medical miracle? I got home and just felt so happy. Suddenly my legs started working again. Grandma quickly blurted out, before I could say a word. Oh, so a good mood is the real miracle cure. Huh? I said sweetly, looking at her. Yes. She answered instantly. I'll go back to Diana's house. I'm used to living there. I'll leave this afternoon. No, right now. Just give me a basket for my laundry so I can take it to dry. Daniel had just returned, with Grandma now begging to leave. He had no choice but to escort her again. Amalia didn't fully recover from the shock until Grandma finally left. It hit her, even her own mother-in-law had been defeated by me. She turned to look at me, eyes filled with pure fear. Finally, she gave up. Completely. I was very satisfied with that reaction. Mother-in-law, you can go clean your mother-in-law's room now, I said calmly, returning to my room to read. She stepped into the old lady's room, and a wave of stench hit her like a truck. Oh, right. I didn't reopen the windows, and the old woman never washed the bedding. Chapter 15. When Daniel came home, I was drawing the layout for our room. I had picked up sketching in my previous life, right before I died, from my delicate and utterly helpless former mother-in-law at Simon's house. Wife, what are you doing? He asked. I'm thinking about fixing up our room a bit, I replied. You can't sleep in the bed yet, but that's not something we want the whole neighborhood gossiping about, and I can't let you sleep on the floor forever either. I handed him the blueprint I'd drawn. With this redesign, I could build a raised platform in the room. He could sleep on that at night. Daniel's eyes were filled with emotion. He knew his wife still cared about him, but deep down, he was still a mess, a layabout who used to chase cats, tease dogs, and hang out with his loser friends. He couldn't even pass the security guard test at the textile factory. Sigh. It really was all his fault. No wonder his wife wouldn't let him in the bed. I glanced at him. Come on, let's go to the junkyard and see if we can find any usable wood. Yes. Wife, Daniel replied instantly, eagerly tagging along. In our past life, Daniel had been kind of trash, impulsive, easily manipulated, and not very bright, but not completely irredeemable. Ruby once told me, after her death, he cried his heart out. Sure, he ignored her, didn't defend her, and never helped her with chores, but at least he never hit her. As we walked, I turned to him and said, Daniel, only cowards and trash hit their wives and kids. He froze for a second. It immediately reminded him of the day I moved in. He had raised his hand at me. Wife, yesterday, you hit my mom first, and I just reacted. I swear, no matter how much I dislike a woman, I've never hit one before. I looked at him and nodded. What happened yesterday? I'll let it go. As a son, you acted on instinct to protect your mom. That's not your fault. Daniel was about to look smug, but I continued. You need to understand right from wrong. It was your mom who raised her hand first. I think you know exactly what she was trying to do. As the man of this house, you need to know where your loyalty lies. We're a family now. If your mom wants to interfere, and you don't step in, I'll use my own methods to handle it. Daniel fell into deep thought. Looks like that itch on his scalp meant his brain was finally trying to grow. At the junkyard, I handed the gatekeeper uncle a cigarette. It was from Daniel's pack. Daniel, ow, that hurts my soul. Uncle, we just got married. Don't have much furniture yet. We came to see if there's anything salvageable we can bring back and fix up. I said with a cheerful smile. You're a thrifty little wife. I like that. The old man chuckled. Go on in. If you find anything good, I'll even help you get a cart. Thank you so much. I was so happy. I gave him the rest of Daniel's cigarette pack. Daniel. Haha. No problem. No problem. The uncle was overjoyed. I dragged Daniel into the yard with me. Before long, we found a beautifully carved canopy bed. It had been dumped carelessly on the side, with 2 broken legs. Also, 2 desks, several chairs, and a wardrobe. These were exactly the same items I'd picked in my past life. Wife, this is too much. It won't fit in our room. Daniel whispered. Take it all. What we can use, we'll use. What we can't, we'll chop up for firewood. I said, glancing at him. Daniel nodded right away. My wife really knows how to live smart. Chapter 16. With the help of the gatekeeper uncle, everything I picked out was quickly hauled back to the Sun household. Oscar's son, being the director of the textile factory, had a big courtyard at home. Amalia had planted a vegetable patch in one corner. Originally, she wanted to plant flowers, but considering the current political climate, Oscar vetoed that idea. She had no choice but to grow practical crops, leaving the rest of the yard empty. When Amalia saw us dragging in so much junk, she was speechless. She mumbled a few complaints under her breath, but didn't dare say them aloud, and quickly turned around and went inside. Daniel and I quickly got to work, dismantling everything piece by piece, while pulling apart the bed, desks, and wardrobe. We found several boxes hidden inside. Daniel's eyes lit up, sparkling with curiosity. Lowering his voice, he whispered, Wife, could these be someone's treasures? I smacked his arm. Move all the boxes into our room. Hide them under the bed, and don't mention them to anyone. Daniel obediently nodded and did exactly as told. We dismantled the rest. Some of the wood planks were still usable. The rest, we smashed up for firewood. Watching that beautifully carved canopy bed get broken into pieces, it made my heart ache. But it had to be done. Given the political atmosphere, if anyone caught wind of even the slightest misconduct, the entire family could get exiled. It would be a disaster. As we clanked and hammered away, more and more neighbors came by to watch the commotion. Seeing Daniel working alongside me, they all commented, Wow, this new daughter-in-law really gets along with Daniel. Look at Daniel working. I've never seen that boy lift a finger before. What a change since getting married. Amalia heard all the comments from inside the house. She stomped her foot in frustration, but she had to admit, Daniel was really listening to me now. By the time we finished, it was already noon. There wasn't time to make anything fancy, so I quickly made some noodles. Oscar didn't come home for lunch. He'd made an exception yesterday because I was a new bride. Normally, he was far too busy to come back. Once the noodles were done, Daniel wolfed down 2 huge bowls before finally feeling full. He usually didn't eat that much, but he'd gone running in the morning and then worked non-stop with me through lunch. His appetite had skyrocketed. Amalia watched her son devour bowl after bowl, eyes full of heartache. She glanced at me again, clearly wanting to glare, but seeing my icy expression, she swallowed it and looked away. In the afternoon, Daniel and I continued tidying, with me giving orders. He pounded and hammered all over again. More neighbors came to spectate. A lot of housewives and grandmothers in the neighborhood didn't have jobs, and aside from cooking, had little to do. Seeing the Sun family so lively, of course they wanted to take a peek. With all this tidying, the room looks much brighter, one cheerful auntie said. I was warm and polite to them, and even had Daniel pour water for everyone. We just want things more convenient for daily life, and if we have kids in the future, we won't have to worry about space. Might as well do the work while we've got time, I said with a big smile. Everyone agreed. This new daughter-in-law had a wonderful temper. Amalia, a good temper? Her? Do none of you realize our house was like a battlefield just yesterday? Chapter 17. Oriana. I heard quite the commotion from your house yesterday. A gossipy old aunt, one with a particularly sharp tongue, said with a teasing smile. Clearly, she was hoping to dig up some drama. My expression cooled slightly. Indeed, quite a few relatives came by yesterday, I replied calmly. As the new daughter-in-law, it's only natural for family to drop in and visit, and the kids in the family tend to get a little rowdy. If we disturbed the neighbors, I sincerely apologize. Just relatives visiting? Because I heard there was some other business. Auntie, I cut in with a light tone. You must have misheard. My father-in-law runs a strict household. Surely you're not implying that he's lax or that his family members are unruly? The aunt froze. She didn't dare say anything about my father-in-law. Oscar's son held a great deal of authority at the textile factory. If she actually spread rumors involving him, forget outsiders, even her own husband might slap her for it. Yes, must have been my mistake. I smiled again. Auntie, you're getting on in years, these things happen. Get some rest when you get home. My smile never left my face. But everyone around could see, this new daughter-in-law wasn't one to mess with. Think about it, I'd only been in the house for a few days, and I already had Amalia and Daniel wrapped around my finger. How could I possibly be easy to bully? Everyone got the message quickly. No one dared test my patience again. As dinner time approached, the neighbors all went back to their homes. Daniel and I finished tidying up our room completely. I built a raised platform beneath the window. The inside could store things, and the top was padded, with a small square table set up. It'd be our little space for study and daily life. At night, Daniel could sleep there with a blanket, and once the curtain was drawn, no one would know a thing. As usual, I cooked dinner. I never intended to be a hands-off wife. What's mine to do, I'll do. What's not mine, I won't touch. Right as I finished cooking, Oscar's son came home, rarely on time, alongside Joel and Jessica. By now, those two had figured out who really ran the house. They ate obediently, helped clear the table afterward, then returned to their room to do homework. Once finished, they even came out to wash their own clothes. This week, dishwashing duty belonged to Daniel. Oscar watched his son growing more and more skilled at washing dishes. Nodding with satisfaction, he turned to me. Oriana, did you take Daniel running this morning? I nodded. Yes, Dad. Daniel and I both want to improve ourselves. Right now we don't have jobs, and it's not right to rely on you for everything. We're young and healthy. As long as we work hard and stay focused, I believe we'll find jobs and shine in our own way. The more I spoke, the more pleased Oscar looked. Get some rest, he said warmly. I replied with a smile and walked back to the kitchen. Daniel had just finished cleaning up. The two of us returned to our room. Once inside, I tossed a book at him. Daniel scratched his head. Wife, I get sleepy the second I see a book. No worries, I know how to wake you right up. Daniel shivered and sat up straight. I'm not sleepy anymore. He opened the book right away. But clearly, he'd spent too many years goofing off. He didn't understand most of it. If you don't understand something, just ask me anytime. I said, yes, wife. He nodded quickly and started asking questions. We kept discussing until 10 p.m. At one point, Oscar came out and saw his son studying seriously. The sight made him even more satisfied with me as his daughter-in-law. When Oscar returned to his room and closed the door, Amalia immediately began to complain, telling him all about how the household had turned upside down since I'd arrived. Oscar looked at her coolly. Isn't this change a good thing? Amalia, good. Chapter 18. The next day marked the customary third day return to the bride's family. Early in the morning, Oscar's son took the initiative to tell me, Oriana, today you're going back to your family. Everything that needs preparing has been prepared. Amalia, give Oriana some money. Amalia looked like she'd just bitten into a bitter melon. All the household money is already with Oriana. Oscar glanced at me with surprise. I gave a light cough. Mom gave it to me willingly. Amalia, willingly? Was I out of my mind? Well then, from now on, Oriana will manage the household finances. Amalia, with the in-laws still alive and the daughter-in-law holding the purse strings, how is this life even bearable? She was bitter, internally howling. Dad, don't worry. I'll take care of all the household matters properly from now on. There's no way I was going to turn down such a gift of authority. Oscar nodded in satisfaction and left for work. Daniel and I went shopping for a few gifts to bring back home. He rode the bicycle, and I sat on the back as we made our way to the Yi household. The Yi and Sun families weren't far apart, just two different residential zones. Both of my parents worked at the steel factory. When we arrived, Ruby and Simon were already there. Seeing me and Daniel walk in, Ruby instinctively tensed up. Only when she saw my calm expression did she finally relax and step forward, holding my hand. Sis. I nodded at her. Only then did she fully ease up. You guys got here a while ago? We just arrived too, she said cautiously. Daniel handed the gifts to my mom. Mom, Oriana and I came home to visit you. When Daniel spoke seriously, he actually looked halfway decent, almost respectable. My mom was pleased and nodded repeatedly. Simon greeted Daniel, and the two of them sat down to chat. Daniel was loud and impulsive. Simon calm and composed. The contrast was instantly obvious. Ruby felt a bit unsettled. She pulled me into my old room to chat. Sis, how are things at the Sun house? I smiled and told her about everything that had happened over the past 2 days. Ruby's jaw dropped. Wait, the old lady wasn't really paralyzed? She was pretending? I nodded. Your father-in-law just gave you control of the household finances? You'll even manage his salary from now on? I nodded again. Amalia didn't kick up a fuss? More nodding. Daniel, he actually gets up early to run with you, does chores, and even washes dishes? The more Ruby spoke, the wider her eyes got. It was like hearing about a completely different person. I chuckled. I told you already, Sun House isn't a den of wolves to me. I'm the wolf in their story. Ruby clung to me, tears falling uncontrollably. Sis, it's all because of you. Without you, I'd have ended up just like in the last life. I cut her off gently. How are things between you and Simon? The moment Simon was mentioned, her cheeks flushed pink. He's really good to me. Oh, I teased. In what way exactly? Ruby covered her face in embarrassment. Then after a while, finally told me what had happened in the Fu family over the last 2 days. The moment they got married, Simon gave her his bank book and told her everything about his family. Simon's only family was his mother, a classic elegant Southern lady. She spoke gently, behaved gracefully, and handled housework with ease. She was kind and warm, and the two women got along very well. Ruby always volunteered to do housework. Whenever Simon came home, meals were hot and ready. She was gentle and considerate, and she also enjoyed reading. To their surprise, they shared many common interests, so the two had been quite affectionate and inseparable these past few days. Ruby hesitated for a second, then cautiously asked, you and Daniel, have you, Chapter 19. I shook my head. Ruby looked even more uneasy, as if she felt her happiness had come at my expense. I held her hand gently to reassure her. Simon and I were never meant to be. If I had married him, none of us would have been happy. Things are better this way. At least you're happy now. And my life is more free. We chatted for a while longer, and soon it was time to prepare lunch. Ruby and I went to the kitchen to help my mom. Seeing both her daughters living well, my mother looked truly content. She had always believed that only by marrying Simon would I be happy. But now, watching how well-behaved and obedient Daniel had become in my hands, he didn't look like a spoiled good-for-nothing at all. She hesitated a few times, clearly wanting to say something, so I told her directly that Oscar's son had already handed me control of the household finances. Upon hearing that, her smile deepened. As long as your in-laws value you, that's what matters. Ruby, how are things with Simon? Ruby smiled. Simon gave me his bank book. Only then did my mom completely relax. She loved both daughters equally, she didn't favor Ruby less. But she had always felt a deep sense of guilt toward me. Daniel and Simon accompanied my dad for a few rounds of drinks. After lunch, we said our goodbyes and headed back. Daniel had clearly had a bit too much and was swaying slightly. Simon, on the other hand, held his liquor well as always. Daniel's a little drunk, Simon said with a trace of apology, though he couldn't quite bring himself to call me sister. Understandable, since I really didn't look older than him. I didn't push him. Smiling, I said, I'll take care of him. You take good care of Ruby, too. The way he looked at Ruby, with nothing but gentleness in his eyes, made it clear he was truly fond of her. That kind of gaze, even until the day I died in my previous life. I never saw it from Simon. Back then, he treated me kindly out of duty, but with Ruby, I could tell, it was affection. And affection was enough. I truly hoped they'd be happy in this life. As for the happiness I wanted, I would fight for it with my own hands. Back at the Sun household, I laid Daniel down on the bed. After closing the door, I pulled out the boxes we'd hidden under the bed and opened them up. Inside were gold bars, high-grade jade, and several property deeds, every item a treasure. I carefully repacked them, but leaving them under the bed wasn't safe. Oscar's son was the factory director, and there were surely many eyes watching him. If someone discovered these and decided to report us, our entire family could be ruined. I sat on the raised platform by the window, deep in thought. Eventually, I decided I had to bury them underground. The yard wasn't an option, digging there would raise suspicion. But then, I ran my hand across the floorboards of the platform I was sitting on. Swiftly, I removed the boards, pried open the base, and carefully dug a deep hole. Daniel was still sleeping like a log. Amalia was napping too, quiet as a shadow. I lowered the boxes one by one into the hole. Then I filled the dirt back in, laid the bricks back into place, and restored the wood panels on top. Finally, I returned everything to its original state. In a few years, college entrance exams would be reinstated. After that, the reform era would begin and a new world would open up. I had wandered this world like a ghost for over a decade. I knew what was coming, and the treasure I just buried would be my seed capital. I would build a business empire. I would become the powerful woman I always dreamed of being, and I would run my business from one end of the country to the other. Chapter 20. Over the next month, my life at the Sun household was smooth sailing. Amalia had completely given up on stirring up drama. Her days now were spent buying groceries, chatting with the neighbors, and doing only what I assigned her. Other than cleaning her own room and whatever small tasks I delegated, she didn't need to lift a finger. Before, she had to cook, clean, and even tutor the two kids. Now, with me in the house, she suddenly realized her life had actually gotten easier. Joel and Jessica could handle their own things just fine. They had never needed to be coddled. Once they realized I had no intention of pampering them, their grades, miraculously, improved just a tiny bit. Still scraping the bottom of the class, but at least slightly better. Amalia had only finished elementary school. She couldn't help much with schoolwork. And Daniel? Forget it. Joel and Jessica were in 5th grade now. Next semester, they'd be moving into middle school. They lived full-time in the Sun household. Oscar's son, out of respect for Amalia, never asked her brother to contribute anything financially. And Amalia, of course, would never ask her precious brother for money. In essence, The Sun family was footing the bill for raising 2 extra kids. During school breaks, they'd even get bags of goodies to take back home. But Amalia made it clear, if their grades didn't improve, she wasn't going to support them through middle school. As for me, I was never one to pretend to be a saint, and I had zero interest in saving born troublemakers. I knew the 2 of them wouldn't pass the middle school entrance exam. Sure, I could tutor them and help them make it if I really wanted to, but I didn't. Lately, the 2 had been anxious. They quietly went to Amalia, begging her to teach them, because if they couldn't get into middle school, they'd be sent back to the countryside to farm. For 2 kids used to city life, that was basically the end of the world. Amalia, even if I wanted to help, I literally can't. Just as the kids were about to cry from stress, Daniel's little childhood sweetheart came knocking. Her name was Miranda, delicate and soft-looking, like one of those girls who might collapse if a breeze hit her too hard. When she arrived, Daniel was in the middle of washing dishes. The moment she saw that, she let out a shriek like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Daniel Gidge, how could you be washing dishes? That's a woman's job. Put them down, I'll do it." She immediately rolled up her sleeves and rushed to his side, reaching for the dish in his hand. Daniel, completely unfazed, shoved an unwashed plate into her arms. "Thanks, Miranda. Oh, and while you're at it, scrub the wok and mop the kitchen floor." Then he cheerfully ran back to our room. "Wife, someone's helping me with chores. I'm free early today." "Read a book," I replied, tossing one at him. Daniel instantly picked it up and started reading. He was actually getting used to studying and solving problems now. The recruitment exam was coming up, and Daniel's daily schedule was simple: eat, sleep, do chores, study. 15 minutes later, Miranda had cleaned the entire kitchen and came out looking for Daniel, only to find him practically bouncing with excitement while asking me questions. "Daniel Gidge, what are you doing? Are you studying? Do you need tutoring?" "I can help, I'm really patient." "You can help?" I graduated high school, and my grades were excellent." "That's great, Joel. Jessica, come here. Miranda's going to tutor you." Chapter 21. Miranda looked utterly aggrieved as she was dragged into Joel and Jessica's room to tutor them. I glanced over at Daniel, who was seriously working through practice problems. He muttered under his breath, "I don't need anyone else tutoring me. My wife's way smarter than Miranda." The corner of my lips lifted. Not bad. Sure, he was still a bit of a clueless straight guy with a blunt mouth. But if those words were aimed at outsiders, I could accept them. From that day on, Miranda practically took up permanent residence at the Sun household, claiming she was there to help tutor Joel and Jessica. Under her diligent guidance, the kids' grades remained exactly the same. No progress whatsoever. Meanwhile, Daniel and I were approaching the date of the textile factory recruitment exam. Because Daniel was a participant, and to avoid any accusations of favoritism, Oscar's son personally adjusted the schedule, and even brought along his secretary and several senior managers to supervise outside the testing room. Daniel had prepared thoroughly this time. Despite the difficulty level, he felt pretty confident, almost cocky. Really, while taking the test, he wore a full grin, practically radiating self-satisfaction. Watching his son's confident expression, Oscar knew Daniel was going to pass for sure. After the exam, the papers were graded on site. Any disputes could be addressed immediately. Thanks to all his hard work, Daniel ranked 8th. The factory was hiring 9 people total. I came in first, so of course my name was on the recruitment list. When Daniel saw his name on the red announcement sheet, he literally jumped for joy. He threw his arms around me and shouted, "Wife, look, I passed." I patted him on the shoulder. "Let go." He instantly sprang back. I just got too excited. "That's all." Oscar walked over, gave Daniel a nod of approval. "Daniel, you really did well on this test." "Thank you, Dad." Then Oscar looked at me. "They say a wise man marries a virtuous wife. Since your marriage, Daniel has grown up a lot. You've worked hard, Oriana." I gave him a polite smile. "We've just been following your example, Dad. You're hardworking, diligent, and disciplined, as your children. It's only right that we learn from you." Oscar nodded, clearly pleased. He reached out and gave both me and Daniel a pat on the shoulder. Once you two start at the textile factory, make sure you work hard and shine in your positions. Yes, Dad, we will, Daniel and I answered in unison. When we got home, Amalia had already heard the news. She came rushing up, thrilled. I knew my son was smart. You know nothing, Daniel shot back loudly. If it weren't for my wife keeping me on track, I wouldn't have passed anything. Whatever praise Amalia had planned to give choked right back down her throat. News of Daniel passing the factory exam spread quickly among the neighbors. Everyone knew it was thanks to my tutoring that he passed. From that day on, quite a few neighbors came asking if I could tutor their kids too. I politely turned them all down, claiming I didn't have the time. Let's be real, they weren't going to give me their whole paycheck. Why would I waste energy tutoring other people's kids? Soon after passing the exam, Daniel and I officially joined the factory. I was assigned to the factory's administrative office, handling documents and paperwork. Daniel was placed in the security department. Oscar knew his son well. Yes, Daniel passed. But all that knowledge had basically been force-fed to him by his wife. Security duty was probably the most suitable position for him. Chapter 22. Once work settled into a steady rhythm, I met up with Ruby again. She was doing well in the Fu household. When she found out that I had every single member of the Sun family perfectly under control, and that Daniel had even passed the textile factory exam under my management, she was genuinely shocked. In our past life, she had tried countless times to get Daniel on the right track, using soft words and gentle persuasion. But no matter what she said, Daniel simply refused to change. I smiled and said, "Just beat him once, that'll do it." Ruby silently gave me a thumbs up. Indeed, the Sun family was better suited for me. Simon's about to be transferred to Province G. I'm going with him, she said. When you get there, make sure to write me. Keep in touch. In a few years, the development there will really take off. I told her. Ruby nodded. Like me, she'd spent over a decade drifting through this world like a ghost. She, too, knew how the future would unfold. We chatted until late in the evening before finally going our separate ways. A couple days later, Ruby and Simon left. Before they departed, we had dinner together at my house with our parents. This time, Daniel didn't drink. Now that he was working in the security department, I didn't allow it, and Daniel, ever obedient, did as he was told. His one and only motivation these days? Getting permission to sleep in the same bed as me. I knew what he was thinking. And to be fair, I could see he truly treated me well. But so far, I hadn't developed any romantic or physical feelings for him. To me, that sort of thing should only happen when both people are genuinely willing. When we got back home, we were surprised to find Miranda still there. She had just finished tutoring Joel and Jessica. As she stepped out and saw me and Daniel chatting closely, her eyes turned red. Then, out of nowhere, her whole body jolted, like she was having a spasm, and she tripped over her own feet, stumbling directly toward Daniel. Daniel reacted instantly, pulling me aside. Miranda hit the floor with a dramatic splat, crying out in pain. Daniel pressed a hand to his chest. Good thing we dodged. She's so heavy, if she'd landed on us, we both would have gotten hurt. I smirked. Classic Daniel, brutally honest straight man. Miranda's tears flowed even harder. Daniel Gidge. I'm hurt. Could you take me to the hospital? Daniel was just about to say no, when Amalia came out of her room. She spotted Miranda on the floor and rushed over. Miranda, what happened? Then she turned to Daniel, a little flustered. Daniel, quick, take Miranda to the hospital. She got hurt while tutoring the kids. We can't just ignore that. She glanced at me, clearly a bit hesitant. She knew I didn't like Miranda, and she wasn't blind to Miranda's obvious feelings for her son. But as a mother, having a girl fawn over her son did stroke her pride a little. And since Miranda was helping with Joel and Jessica's schoolwork, Amalia hadn't rushed to kick her out. Now that Miranda was injured, Amalia couldn't exactly pretend nothing happened. Daniel looked at me. I gave him a nod. Only then did he go fetch the bicycle. Amalia helped Miranda onto the bike, and Joel and Jessica tagged along as well. They all headed to the hospital together. Now, the Sun house was left with just me. I returned to my room without a word. The The whole family didn't get back until deep into the night. When Daniel returned, I was already sitting on the platform, planning my next move, a trip to the black market. Chapter 23, Wife. I'm back, Daniel called out as soon as he stepped through the door. He immediately launched into an update about what happened at the hospital. Apparently, Miranda had fractured a bone. Like, how is she that weak? She just tripped and ended up with a fracture. And now she has to be hospitalized. My mom's staying with her at the hospital. And then she actually had the nerve to. Daniel trailed off. I looked up at him. What? She wants me to take care of her at the hospital? Daniel nodded reluctantly. She's dreaming. No way I'd let my wife go take care of her. I'll go, I said. This time, it was Daniel's turn to freeze. Wife. I swear I didn't agree to it. She brought it up. And I said no right away. How could I let you go care for her? Who does she think she is? Relax. I'm not mad at you, I said, beckoning him over. I'm serious. I want to go to the hospital to look after her. Daniel looked thoroughly confused. But if there's one thing he understood by now, it was this: do what the wife says. So, should I take you there? He asked carefully. I nodded. Yes, I was going to the hospital to take care of Miranda. She was the last piece of unfinished business from my past life. At the hospital, when Daniel and I arrived, not only was Miranda stunned, but so was Amalia. Oriana, what are you doing here? Amalia asked in disbelief. I'm here to look after Comrade Miranda, I replied calmly. Mom, you and Daniel should head home. Miranda's eyes instantly lit up. Clearly, she thought Daniel had asked me to come take care of her. She looked ridiculously pleased with herself, like she was one smug hair flip away from flying. Daniel, are you out of your mind? Amalia glared at her son, eyes wide. Her look said it all. Have you forgotten what a beating feels like? Why on earth would you let your wife come serve another woman? Daniel scratched his nose awkwardly. She insisted on coming. Mom, I didn't make her. I turned to Amalia. Mom, take Daniel home. Amalia still couldn't figure out what I was up to, but knowing she couldn't win if she challenged me, she nodded and left with Daniel. Now, it was just me and Miranda in the hospital room. Miranda lifted her chin with a smug little tilt. Well, since you're here to serve me, smack! I slapped her across the face. Serve you? You really dared to use that word? What are you, the daughter of a capitalist tycoon? I didn't mean that. I meant, you're here to look after me. Smack! Another slap. I am here to look after you. But the tone you just used? I didn't like it. Miranda's eyes filled with tears. How can you just hit people like that? I didn't hit you randomly. I hit you on purpose, and I hit accurately. Miranda trembled, her fingers shaking with fury. But this hospital room just happened to only have one patient, her. It was late. The doctors and nurses were already off duty. She was all alone, and she definitely couldn't take me in a fight. She sniffled. Don't cry. I find it annoying, I said flatly. Miranda, internally I'm so pitiful. Can't even cry now. Later that night, Miranda woke up needing to use the bathroom. She sat up and nudged me with her uninjured arm. Oriana, I need to use the restroom. Oh, you want me to help you take your pants off? Miranda's face flushed red. And no, I can do it with one hand. Your legs aren't broken. And if you can take them off one-handed, why are you waking me up? Is it because you can't sleep, so you think I shouldn't sleep either? Chapter 24. Miranda's eyes turned red again. I just wanted someone to go with me. I'm a little scared on my own, she said pitifully. I curved my lips into a smile. Sure, I'll go with you. So, I accompanied Miranda to the bathroom. She must have thought I was doing it for Daniel's sake, that I was still trying to save face for him. Otherwise, why else would I be so obedient? I glanced at her, lips curling higher. An hour later, I woke her up again. Time to use the bathroom. Miranda's eyes flew open. But I already went earlier. I have a duty to look after you. Remember? I can't just let you lie there in bed. What if you wet yourself? That'd be such a hassle for the staff. Miranda's face turned beet red, and that's how the rest of the night went. every single hour. I woke her up and made her walk to the bathroom. By the time morning came, she was sitting up with swollen eyelids, on the verge of tears. This time, it was genuine. When the doctor came for rounds, Miranda immediately requested to be discharged. Her injury didn't really require hospitalization anyway, she could recover at home. After the doctor signed the forms, Miranda swiftly paid her fees and left without waiting for me. I watched her go, rolling my eyes. No manners whatsoever. Typical. I went home, freshened up quickly, then headed to work at the textile factory. From that day on, Miranda never came back to the Sun household. She probably realized she couldn't outplay me, she couldn't outtalk me, and she definitely couldn't outfight me. Once it was clear Daniel would never be hers, she got married not long after. I heard the man she married was a drunk who also beat her. Impressive taste, honestly. Once my job at the textile factory became more stable, I started taking advantage of the employee discount on slightly defective fabric. I bought a bunch, then had Daniel use his quota to buy more. After a bit of simple cleaning and processing, these fabrics sold extremely well at the black market. Of course, I didn't go alone. I made sure to drag Daniel along every time. Only by tying him to my boat could I ensure he'd stay obedient. I couldn't help but think of my past life, how I'd tried to resell fabric and goods on the black market, only for Simon to nearly turn me into the police himself. He told me it was illegal. If his mother hadn't cried and pleaded with him to let it go, he really would have sacrificed me in the name of righteousness. Thinking back, looking at this life now, I glanced sideways at Daniel, who was currently lugging a giant sack over his shoulder. My lips curled again. After just 2 trips, we'd already made over 100 yuan. Daniel's eyes sparkled. Wife, this really makes money. We can't go too often. I reminded him. We'll do it whenever the opportunity comes, and once the country loosens its policies a bit, we can go down south to source goods and resell them up here. Wife, I'll do whatever you say. You just tell me, and I'll do it. Daniel agreed eagerly, completely obedient. Lately, we also kept up the habit of studying together. Daniel had thought that once he got a stable job at the textile factory, he could stop studying. To his surprise, I had him continuing his lessons. Wife, we already have jobs. Why are we still studying? Maintain the mindset. Only when you're prepared can you seize real opportunities when they come. Daniel didn't fully understand what I meant by opportunities, but he nodded anyway, because whatever his wife said, he'd do. No questions asked. Chapter 25. In the blink of an eye, we had been married for 6 years. Daniel was still sleeping on the floor platform while I slept on the bed. Naturally, we didn't have any children. Amalia began dropping hints, suggesting we should go get checked at the hospital. She even talked about making some strange folk remedies for me to try. This time, Daniel stepped up himself. He told her he was the problem. Amalia was stunned. She couldn't believe her son, her own son, might be the one who was not working properly. She immediately insisted on taking him to the hospital for a checkup. Daniel absolutely refused. He'd already admitted he was the problem. Why would she drag him to the hospital just to make him confess in front of everyone? He hadn't even made it to his wife's bed after all these years. What could be more humiliating than that? Seeing his reaction, Amalia finally accepted the truth. And from that day forward, she treated me even more cautiously, terrified I might leave her son just because we didn't have a child. Soon, 1977 arrived. That was the year reinstated the college entrance examination system. National policy was also starting to loosen up in many areas. I had been studying high school curriculum with Daniel for years. We'd already gone through the material twice. As soon as the news about the college entrance exams came out, Oscar's son personally informed the both of us. Over the years, other than not having kids, our life had been smooth sailing. As for the old matriarch of the Sun family, she died in Diana's home. They said she passed away peacefully, but the truth was, she suffered quite a bit. When she died, I went to see her. Her body was covered in pressure ulcers. In our past life, when Ruby took care of her, she was spotless, not a single grease mark on her clothes, let alone a wound. Yet in the care of her own biological daughter, she died in such a sorry state. The exam day came. Daniel and I went to the test center together. Thinking back, we had already been married for 7 years, but I was only 25. After the exam, we went over the answers together. Daniel gently took my hand and asked in a low voice, "Wife, do you want to leave me?" He could feel that I didn't return the same kind of love he had for me, not in the way he hoped. But he liked me, more and more. In fact, there was one time, when he was drunk, that he confessed to me. He said he wanted to be with me, truly, for the rest of our lives, never parting. He said he would wait for me to open my heart, to truly accept him. I looked into his earnest eyes. To be honest, if I put aside our past life, Daniel had turned out to be pretty impressive in this one. He was 6'1", had a nice face, listened to everything I said, brave, quick to learn, and recently, he'd been improving rapidly under my physical training. But whether or not I wanted to really build a family with him, I hadn't decided. After all, university was about to start. I'd have 4 years of school, and afterward, I had plans to launch my own business empire. Wife, you can take me with you, no matter what you decide to do. If you don't want me as your husband, I'll be your little follower, Daniel said carefully. I know I was an idiot before, but that was before I met you. Once I met you, I realized life could be something completely different, no matter what you choose. I'll accept it. I looked at him for a long moment, then the corners of my lips lifted slightly. You can sleep on the bed tonight. After all, why should I let someone else reap the benefits of a man I had trained so well? Really? Daniel cried, eyes wide with joy. He pulled me into a hug, completely overwhelmed. Finally! It's been 7 years, we're finally going to have our wedding night. Chapter 26. A month later, the results of the college entrance exams were released. Daniel and I both got into G University, in G Province. The day the results came out, both Oscar's son and Amalia were moved to tears. Their family had produced not just one, but 2 college students. Oscar's son was even publicly praised by his superiors. They said he had done an excellent job with his family education and invited him to give a speech. Oscar was radiant with pride. Amalia's chin practically pointed to the sky every time she went out. And she made sure to tell everyone, "Our family married a good daughter-in-law. That's how." Meanwhile, Ruby and Simon had already settled down in G Province. Simon's rank was quite high now. He had reportedly been promoted to division commander. If Daniel and I ever needed help after we arrived, Simon would be able to offer support. Over the years, Ruby and I had kept in close contact through letters. When she heard I got into college, she was genuinely happy for me. And when she found out Daniel also passed the exam and would be coming with me, she couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Different men, different women. The fate that follows is completely different. With Ruby by his side, Simon had steadily climbed the ranks. Ruby had also blended perfectly into the military compound's community. She was naturally soft-spoken and gentle, and her voice was always soft when she spoke. No one dared raise their voice at her. Even the other military wives would speak to her carefully, afraid of startling her. Simon's mother adored Ruby, and their mother-in-law/daughter-in-law relationship was as harmonious as it could be. Ruby had now given birth to 2 children, a son and a daughter, making for a picture-perfect family. Daniel and I arrived in G City at the end of August. Ruby and Simon personally came to pick us up. Noticing how obviously closer Daniel and I had become, Ruby's smile grew even warmer. "Stay at our place for now," Ruby said, taking my hand. "You two can move into the dorms when school starts." "All right. Sorry to trouble you," I replied politely. Ruby gave me a soft smile. "We're sisters. Don't say things like that. I'm thinking of buying an apartment near campus," I added. "If we're allowed to live off campus, I'd rather not stay in the dorms." Over the years, Daniel and I had made quite a bit of money from black market trading. We'd accumulated a decent chunk of startup capital. This time, we brought everything we could carry, including those few special boxes from back then. "I'll take you to look at some listings," Simon offered. "No need to trouble you, brother-in-law," I said. "Daniel, Ruby, and I can just walk around and look. I know people at the housing bureau," Simon said gently. "It'll be faster if I go with you." See? Now that we changed roles and status, even talking with Simon had become a calm and respectful affair. After a few more words, Daniel and I settled down at Simon's house. The next day, Simon personally drove us to meet a contact of his at the housing bureau. Sure enough, there were several units available in the area we were targeting. I didn't hesitate. I bought every unit I liked on the spot. Seeing that, Ruby suddenly remembered what would happen to housing prices in the future. She immediately pulled Simon aside to discuss buying some as well. Simon had no idea why Ruby suddenly wanted to buy property, but he handed over all his bonuses and allowances from missions to her anyway. As long as his wife was happy, that's all that mattered. Ruby trusted my business instincts. Wherever I bought, she followed suit and picked up 2 units nearby. Looks like we'll be neighbors in the future, Ruby said softly, holding my hand. I nodded. Yes, we'd be neighbors again, and this time, we'd build a new life from the ground up, side by side. Chapter 27. The year Daniel and I graduated from college, national policies had largely opened up. I made a decisive choice. I turned down the job assignment from the university and was ready to go all in on my business plans. Daniel, on the other hand, chose to take a position at the Ministry of Commerce. His job gave him access to a wealth of information, which was extremely helpful to me. His working hours were also relatively stable, and he was based locally. 2 months before graduation, I found out I was pregnant. After years of waiting, Daniel was finally going to be a father. He wanted to make sure his job gave him enough time to help raise the child. Oscar's son had officially retired from his position as director of the textile factory. He and Amalia were both brought over to G-City by Daniel. My parents had started showing signs of various health issues. After discussing it with Ruby, we also brought them over. I had bought multiple properties over the years, 1 apartment for my in-laws, and 1 for my parents. Ruby initially wanted to chip in, but I waved her off. If you have time, just visit them more often. When I'm busy, I won't be able to take care of them. Ruby knew me well after all these years. She didn't argue and readily agreed. It wasn't until I got ready to start my business that I took full stock of my finances. And the more I looked, the better I felt. Ruby knew I was about to start a business, so she handed me her savings account she'd quietly built up over the years. Oriana, I know you're capable. I'm not trying to take advantage of you. Just let my money tag along with yours, and give me a share when you turn a profit. I raised an eyebrow. What if I lose it all? Doesn't matter, Ruby said with a soft laugh. Simon said even if we go broke, he can still support me with his salary. Wow, that PDA was so strong I felt it hit me in the face. I smacked her lightly. Ruby chuckled. I trust you. I gave her a nod. Don't worry, I may not be able to double your money right away, but I'll make sure you don't lose it. From that day forward, I hit the ground running, scouting store locations, finding suppliers, and seeking the right place to build a factory. This was an era when, as people said, even pigs could fly if caught in the right wind. But I wasn't just a pig, I was someone with 10+ years of foresight. I'd spent time learning, gathering real-world experience, and I was more than ready. Daniel remained the same as always, supportive and obedient to my decisions. Amalia had also changed a lot over the years. Ever since I married into the family and overwhelmed her, she'd kept her head down. Even if she wasn't satisfied, she'd either swallow her frustration or adjust herself quietly. When she found out I was giving up a secure, government-assigned job to start a business, she was furious, pacing in circles at home. But in the end, she didn't dare say a single harsh word to me. Oscar's son, on the other hand, openly supported my bold move into the private sector. He had just stepped down from his position and had a solid understanding of the country's new direction. I had 2 business directions in mind. 1. A garment factory. The clothing business in the South could expand rapidly across the entire country. 2. Electronics. In the near future, electronics would become essential to every industry in China. I had already purchased 2 plots of land on the outskirts of the city. Now I just needed to get the permits and handle the administrative side of things. Although Daniel worked at the Ministry of Commerce, he was still new and didn't have much experience with industrial and business licensing. So I turned to Ruby. After all, her husband Simon had plenty of former comrades in key departments. With just 1 word from him, I wouldn't have to run around chasing approvals. Chapter 28. Ruby took me to find Simon. and he immediately assigned one of his aides to accompany us to meet his old comrades who could help. I had all my documents in order, and the business plan was perfectly put together. The business registration went smoothly, and the tax paperwork was completed just as quickly. Once all the approvals were done, we officially started recruiting workers for the factory. For the garment factory, I invited Oscar's son, now retired, to act as my managing director. I also roped Ruby into the operation. Although Ruby hadn't worked in recent years, she'd kept up with reading and self-study. Her thinking was progressive, and I had full confidence in her abilities. With my father-in-law's guidance, I knew it was only a matter of time before Ruby could stand on her own in management. When I pulled Ruby into the factory, she looked utterly confused. "You said you'd make the money and share it with me. Why am I suddenly clocking into work?" I grinned and gently pinched her cheek. "Your kids are older now, and your husband's career is solid. Wouldn't staying home every day be boring? You don't need to work hard, just stop by the factory, supervise things a bit, offer some guidance. Welcome, Director Yi." Ruby couldn't win the argument and eventually gave in to working at the factory. All the design sketches were created together after brainstorming between me and Ruby. She had a strong artistic talent, and her designs were always fresh and eye-catching. Plus, with our decades of experience wandering this world, we had a deep understanding of trends. Soon, our clothing factory became well known throughout the province. Next, I planned to expand nationwide, but my belly was growing, and traveling became inconvenient. Daniel was also reluctant to let me go on business trips, so thankfully Simon introduced me to a group of retired soldiers. Retired soldiers are loyal, capable, and, thanks to their training, more than able to handle themselves. With them out expanding our territory, I could feel at ease. Over at the clothing factory, with Oscar's son and Ruby managing things smoothly, I barely had to worry. My attention shifted to the electronics factory. We had just installed a production line. Both Daniel and I had studied physics in university, so we had a decent understanding of the field. Once the electronics factory started operations, I brought in a few of our highly skilled college classmates. Each was given shares in the company. With equity in hand, everyone was motivated and invested. Time flew, and the day I was to give birth arrived. Daniel had taken leave from work to be at home. Wherever I went, he followed. If I so much as suggested going to the factory, he'd start pacing in circles like a nervous wreck. So I gave up working and stayed at home. On the third morning at home, I suddenly felt sharp pain in my abdomen. Daniel, seeing my pale face, panicked. He scooped me up in his arms and rushed out the door while shouting, "Mom, Oriana's going into labor." Amalia hurried after us with the pre-packed hospital bag. We sped to the hospital, where a private room had already been arranged in advance. I was taken directly into the delivery room, and after 5 hours of labor, I finally gave birth to a baby girl. Amalia looked like she wanted to say something. I knew what she was thinking. She wanted a grandson. Family planning was now being enforced. One couple, one child, which meant that now, Daniel would never have a son. But Daniel cradled the tiny, soft bundle in his arms with tears streaming down his face. "Wife, look, our daughter. She's perfect. I can't believe I have a daughter. I'm so happy. I love her so much." Amalia, while still feeling a hint of regret, couldn't help but fall in love with our snowball-like little girl as she grew day by day. Chapter 29. After finishing my postpartum confinement, I officially went back to work. Every morning, after feeding the baby, I headed straight to the electronics factory to oversee operations. The rise of electronic products was a matter of timing. We had to seize the market quickly. Relying on my memories from my previous life, I was able to rapidly establish sales channels. I continued studying diligently and worked closely with Ruby to research market trends. Later, we even traveled abroad together for market exploration. After careful study and consideration, we decided to bring in a new production line for color televisions. Our brand gradually gained a solid foothold in the color TV industry. Later on, we expanded into radios, Walkmans, MP3s, and MP4s. Before the age of 40, I had already achieved financial freedom. Ruby held 20% equity in both of my factories and was making a fortune as well. Simon would often sigh emotionally. saying he had truly married a treasure. One day, Ruby held Simon's hand and asked, "If Oriana had married you instead, do you think you'd have earned even more money?" Simon shook his head. "Oriana is incredibly capable, but both of us are too strong-willed. We're better suited as friends or family, not as spouses. You and I, on the other hand, complement each other perfectly." Simon said it with such sincerity that Ruby smiled gently, and all the lingering regrets in her heart finally faded, no matter what they had experienced in their previous lives. In this life, Ruby had a husband who loved her, 2 lovely children, and a happy family. She also had a lifelong friend and business partner, me, and a career others envied. Looking at it from any angle, she was a woman who had it all. My relationship with Daniel remained steady. He was always obedient and supportive. When our daughter turned 10, Amalia fell gravely ill. Before she passed, the only person she wanted to see was me. She held my hand and told me she had a long, vivid dream. In that dream, I never became her daughter-in-law, and she was a cruel, abusive mother-in-law. She rambled on for a long time, then passed peacefully in her sleep. My feelings toward her were complicated. There was a time when I truly despised her. But whether it was because of my strength, or because of the attitude of Oscar's son and Daniel, in the end, she really did change. After so many years of living together, there was some affection there. Daniel and I held a proper funeral for her. Ruby also came to pay her respects. She lit a stick of incense and quietly stepped back after bowing. I knew at that moment she had finally made peace with her past. 8 years later, our daughter was admitted to her dream university. Daniel retired early, and once he did, the 2 of us got passports and began traveling the world. The world has so many beautiful landscapes, and we wanted to experience them all. Everywhere we went, I would send postcards to Ruby. We kept up our lifelong habit of writing letters to each other. 10 years later, Daniel and I returned to our hometown. Ruby and Simon, now retired, also returned. Our 2 families became neighbors again. Ruby and I often sat together for long chats and leisurely strolls. Daniel and Simon would occasionally share a drink, reminiscing about the old days. Our later years were peaceful and happy. This world had been kind to us. It had given us a second chance at life. A chance to grasp hope, to begin again, and that, in itself, was a blessing.